Do you ever feel like unfulfilled or that there's something missing and you just don't know what? Do you ever feel like you set goals? You might even you achieve most of those goals, but still there's this desire to do more, to gain more, or that goal didn't necessarily, or reaching that goal didn't necessarily give you the feeling that you thought it was going to give you? Yeah. I think I had a revelation this weekend um, about something that I do that I didn't realize that I was doing that is actually not productive and it's not helpful to me. And I guarantee most of us are doing this and not realizing it. And that is, I think most of us are people pleasers. Like, I would never say that I was a people pleaser. I would have never been like, oh yeah, I kind of just go along to get along. I don't identify myself like that. I would think like, no, I say what I want, mean what I say, and I try not to be mean when I say it, depending on who you ask. But I recognize that I do people please, but my people pleasing shows up differently. And by people pleasing, I just mean like you just, do whatever you can to avoid conflict. And I don't know if most of you know, people pleasing is actually, for a lot of people, can be a response to trauma, right? So think about this in that you've learned as an adult, or you learned as a child, that if you just went along with things, or if you weren't as noticeable, if you just did the things maybe that your parents or your caregivers wanted you to do, then you'd be less in distress. So you learn to not say what it is that you want to say, do what it is that you want to do, because it would avoid some sort of distress. If you grew up in a household where it's like children are to be seen and not heard, you might be a people pleaser in that you didn't make noise, or you were very quiet in the house because you didn't want to be disruptive to, a parent that was sleeping because they worked all night. And so there was maybe a lot of tension and anxiety around making noise or being showy. I don't know, showy. So anyway, that you might as an adult then learn, or as a child learn, and then it's demonstrated as an adult as just doing things to accommodate and appease other people. The thing about people pleasing, and the way I recognize that I was doing it, is that this still kind of shocks me because I really did not think I was a people pleaser. Is that, do you ever find yourself saying like, oh yeah, where do you want to go eat? Oh, I don't have a preference. Oh, where do you want to, who wants to go next? And it's like, inside I'm thinking, I don't want to go next, but I'm like, oh, I'm flexible. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So I was in a training this weekend, a 3-day training to add a specialty to my job, a new specialty so I can work with clients in a different capacity. And it was the second part of this like 6-day training. The first 3 days were back in April. And then this weekend I had this intense 3-day, all day, 9 to 5:30 training. And, we had people from all across the country on this Zoom, about 40 BIPOC clinicians. And we were doing this training, and then we had to go into breakout rooms. So in a room of like 3, virtual, this is all virtual, like I said, Zoom. And I know as soon as I went into the small groups, we were instructed to assign yourself a role. You have to choose between clinician, client, patient, or an observer. And I knew going into the room, like since April and that last training that I did, I haven't had enough time to read all the materials and the articles we were supposed to read and all this stuff. And I was like, oh gosh, I really just want to be either observer or client, because doing the practicums, you're just really role playing. And I think I can role play a client, even though that part was hard too, because the premise to all this is trauma. And so you have to access some traumatic experiences that you've gone through, but still, I felt more comfortable being either the client or the observer than the actual clinician, because the clinician, you have to know the skills, or practice those skills in this practicum. So I went in thinking like, I'm going to say that I want that role. So as we, are talking to the other two women in my group, they're like, oh, so who wants to be what? And I'm like, oh, I'm flexible, I'm open. And I'm like, that's not what internally I wanted, but that's what I said. Or maybe one of the other women already had selected, was she put it out there like, no, guys, this is what I've been going through. I really can't be in this position, so I want to be this. And then I was just like, okay, I just went along with it. Nothing about them. This was me internally feeling one way, but on the outside expressing something different, to not make it awkward, to not make it weird. And I was like, and I realized, like, I always say like, oh, I'm flexible. I used to say, I don't care. When people say, well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go eat? What do you want to do? If we're all going to hang out, or if we're planning a vacation, where do we want to go? I'm like, oh, I don't care. And then I realized, like, I don't care sounds rude. It comes across as rude. So I'll just say, it's not that I don't care. I'm flexible. Like, I'm not tied to any outcome or result, as long as the goal is met. And so when we were going into the groups, and I remember saying I'm flexible, for a split second, I thought, why do I always say that? Why do I always say I'm flexible when I really don't want to do this role? I don't want to be the clinician today. I'm not ready. I didn't feel prepared. And we could have at least talked it out before someone, these are very accomplished people. No one would have had a problem if we maybe talked it out. But I sacrificed my genuine desire to not be a problem to the group, who had already expressed, I think most of them had already expressed what they wanted. And so later on that night, like, I left that alone. We did the whole thing. Later on that night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was trying to go back to sleep. And I thought about that, and I realized something, that I abandon myself a lot. By saying I'm flexible, I'm really abandoning my genuine belief about what I want, or my genuine desire to not be disruptive, or to go along with everyone else. And that is people-pleasing behavior, right? So the irony of me, and why do we people please? For me, I think it's an attachment issue. For most people, it's an attachment issue. Fear of not attaching, fear of not connecting with folks, fear of being like not wanted or unwanted. You will sacrifice your own needs to accommodate that of others. That's on a subconscious, like, deeper level, not a conscious belief. So there are people who people please all the time, who kind of just say yes, even though they don't want to do something, right? Do you ever have someone say, oh, can you give me a ride? Or can I borrow your car? And internally, you don't want to do it, but you feel like you don't have a reason to say no. Maybe you're not doing anything. You don't want to seem like a bad guy, or that you're not kind. So you say yes, but internally, it can garner resentment. Not for everyone, not all the time, but oftentimes it does, because you're constantly saying no to you in order to say yes to other people. So the irony there is, we're saying yes to other people so that other people don't maybe not like us or reject us, but in actuality, we're rejecting ourselves. Which the irony there is that we don't want to be alone, but we are abandoning ourselves, which ultimately makes us feel alone. Because those folks, those external folks, they will never fulfill you long term. The only way to be fulfilled long term is to be self-actualized. And by self-actualized, I mean by having boundaries, by doing what it is that you want to do, genuinely want to do. But like someone says, like, let me borrow your car, right? if someone says, let me borrow your car, and you really don't want to let someone borrow your car, rather than just saying, no, I'm not comfortable with that, and then feeling like you need to justify that, we might deny or abandon our genuine desire of saying no and say yes to that person. But deep down inside now, we're feeling distress, anger, and we're actually abandoning ourselves. So we never really maybe really truly learn to trust ourselves because we abandon ourselves all of the time. And if, in this world, we're all looking for connection. It's going to be hard to form connections with others, like genuine connections with others, if you haven't formed a connection with yourself. If you don't learn to, you can't trust yourself because you're constantly doing things to placate others. So if you keep denying yourself what it is that you want, if you keep saying yes to others when you really want to say no, you can't trust your own self. And if you can't trust your own self, it is really difficult and challenging to have genuinely healthy relationships that don't cause distress, that don't cause disease with others. It's really, really challenging. So what do you do to manage that? How do you change this, right? We know this now. Okay, I'm placating, I'm people pleasing, I'm going along to get along. And when I go along to get along, I'm really harming myself. Ultimately, start having boundaries. Start knowing that it's okay to say no. It's okay that when someone says, hey, can you pick me up from work? And you really don't want to, it's okay to say, do you mind finding someone else? And if ultimately you can't find someone, maybe I can. Especially if like you are tired. And I think people have this fear of, am I a good person or a bad person if I say no? And it's like, that's so super subjective, good and bad. We are complex humans. We don't have to just be, good or bad. It doesn't have to be either or. We can always be also and both, right? I can be a good person and sometimes set boundaries and say, no, I can't pick you up at work. I'm not going to, change my schedule to accommodate your needs and make my life more disruptive. You might have to figure that out. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. And it doesn't mean I might not do it all the time, but it's okay. And I don't have to feel bad. I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not just putting your needs before my own. Because when you can put your needs first and you can honor your needs, that makes you less resentful. That makes you less stressful. That causes less distress, which then in turn allows you to have a healthier relationship with yourself and healthier relationships with others. Because think about it. If I'm constantly saying no to myself to accommodate you, and that's causing me resentment and intolerance and making me irritable, that's going to show up within my relationship with you, or if not with you, with someone else, which is only going to cause me more stress or be more disruptive or cause toxic situations. So stop abandoning yourself. Stop abandoning your needs. Now, this doesn't mean like if your kid is crying, you say, well, I don't want to take care of you now, baby, so figure it out yourself. No, obviously when it comes to children, when it comes to caring for folks, right? The actual concrete needs of food, shelter, water, stuff like that. You want to, be able to accommodate needs. I'm not saying allow your baby to cry in the next room because you're too tired to get up. You have to get up and you got to go take care of your baby. They're dependent on you. Again, back to attachment. But if this is in terms of, interrelational relationships or relational dynamics, it's checking yourself, taking stock and inventory, like, why is it that I feel the need to do all of these things? Or to say like, yeah, I do kind of set goals and I meet them, but then I still feel empty, or I still feel like something is not right. Take note of that. Take note of that and ask yourself, is it because that most of the time I'm not allowing myself to genuinely just be me? There's so many of us who have absolutely no idea who we are. And we try to fill that hole with other things, with, you know, designer bags we can't really afford, cars we can't really afford, social media, all these posts about a life that you are portraying that you have and you don't really have. There's all of these things, and it might help temporarily. It might, depending on how many likes you get or the feedback you get from the comments, it might feel good, but that's not sustainable. Like how long can you, if you're getting your validation from external factors, so external factors are not always going to be there, and they're not always going to be positive. You have to learn and lean on internal validation, meaning like you have to fill that hole yourself by becoming your truer self. By becoming your truer self, you live a much more happier, healthier lifestyle. Thank you for watching. Bye.